All right, morning, everybody. A few things to get through. As far as Baptist goes, I have a meeting with Allison and Rogers and West Moreno on Thursday. So we'll figure out if this is something that's going to happen or not. So I appreciate them reaching out and making one last effort to get something on the agenda. Certainly appreciate Commissioner May and Commissioner Hochberger's support of and understanding that this is a community project in every sense of the word, not just because it's in city limits that, especially in that part of town, you don't even know where the city limit line is. And so, because it's just changes block by block. So anyway, lots of thoughts about this particular topic that I certainly out of respect for the process of meeting with them Thursday, I will attempt to not share, but I do appreciate them reaching out. And if this is the, this is the absolute final, we know what no looks like. I think all of you do too. So I do, again, gratitude for them reaching out and saying, let's see if we can figure out something Thursday, or if we just take no for an answer. So looking forward to that conversation. I'll give you guys an update, obviously, next week. We have a security drill at City Hall. You guys heard us talk about this, so please, if you get any phone calls about anything crazy happening here or any noises coming from City Hall, this is it will be closed to the public at noon today. Going through this drill, this is just a ramp up of our safety protocols, emergency protocols that Tim has done a great job of really coming in and examining where there are different areas where we can improve. So looking forward to that, and of course we'll be back open Wednesday regular hours, but we're open until noon today. With the land development code, you remember last December we kicked off the process of the LDC, and that of course it was briefing members of council, public input sessions, input from our city staff, and our partners with Inspire, the consultants that are working on it. They've taken all of that input and they've prepared a preliminary draft for our staff review. And the first review process has been completed by staff, and now the first land development code public draft is available online. So there'll be 2 more opportunities for a public workshop. So again, it is a draft in every sense, and there'll be an open house in mid-October as well. And so there'll be additional details on the city's website. But so it was taking all of that information that we'd already put together between experts, between community members, all of that. And this is the first draft of that. So we'll have another round of public engagement around what we have here, and hopefully wrap this process up and be in a better place to be more efficient and more transparent, and potentially cut some red tape of being able to invest in the city and make sure that we preserve character, all of those different things that you need to balance with a good land development code. So looking forward to that. Just want to shout out our fire department. They're doing for September 11th, doing a 9/11 stair climb, paying tribute to the 343 fighters lost during the 9/11 attacks. They will put on their gear and other local fire departments in climbing the 11 flights of stairs at the Summerwind Resort in Navarre Beach 10 times. So certainly encourage everybody to take a few moments Thursday to remember, as we all do, and know where we were that day, but to honor the nearly 3,000 people who lost their lives on September 11th. They're also in conferring with Chief Brown. I think she's done a great job of trying to get kind of a lay of the land in the police department about what are some things going well, what are some opportunities for improvement. One thing the idea that came from our PPD was approached by officers in the department asking if we could return the U.S. flag to the uniforms, which we will. So I think that's certainly a reasonable request. That is something that will not happen tomorrow because of the manufacturing of the uniforms. It will be as they become new. It's not something that's Velcroed on or off, but I think that's a no-brainer, and certainly our police officers should be proud to wear the American flag on their uniform. So appreciate that suggestion coming to us early, and more than happy to sign on to that. And that's part of trying to engage every single department, understand it could be big things, it could be little things, somewhere in between, but that matter to people, and that they feel heard here in the department. So looking forward to getting that more integrated. And again, that'll be something that will take place over time. And Mike Wood can give you more details on that as needed. Let's see, best small airport. We're trying to get yet again in the top 10 of best small airports for USA Today, and it's a public online vote. And certainly we will shamelessly present on all of our social media channels, voting early and voting often. So you'll be able to see that on our channels as well as the airports. And I have an update for the big monstrosity at the port. I think you guys all got it covered yesterday. The TX 10,000, the heavy lift vessel that'll be here, dodging some rough waters out in the Gulf, and we'll be here till Friday. So any questions on that, I will not answer for you, but I will get you there. I don't know much about a TX 10,000, but if you have any specific questions, we'll do our best. But that is everything I've got, and happy to take your questions.
Mayor, could you, on the Baptist issue, I guess, what's your reaction to the discussion that the county commission had last week?
Yeah, that's the reaction I'll withhold until I have. Listen, we try to have our eyes on the prize. What we want is to do something that communities cannot do. We can't find one that have ever taken an abandoned hospital of this size, gotten into a public-private partnership, and gotten it taken down in this short amount of time. Again, you guys heard me say many times, whether it's Birmingham or New Orleans, or more often than not, these are buildings that sit in communities and in neighborhoods for 15 and 20 years. And so that's been kind of my recurring theme, is like the eyes on the prize is to not leave this neighborhood behind, to not leave our city behind, to not leave the neighboring county residents behind, and just say it's someone else's problem, or that we have no obligation to it, or it's someone else's fault. We can all do that, and we can sit and be like every other community with those buildings there for 20 years. So my eyes on the prize, I would be hypocritical if I were to opine too much on some of the speculation that I heard, because the goal here is that I'd like to meet with the county Thursday and let's get something to a no vote. I will keep it positive and say I certainly appreciate Commissioner May's advocacy and support, and him knowing the value of that this isn't just for his district, and it's not just for the city limits, that this is a regional project. And so that's not a slight at anybody else, but obviously, he is helping us try to advocate for this as the sitting commissioner where this is located. And so I don't want that to come across as me being unappreciative of those efforts. And so again, I'll let it play out Thursday. If I were to address one concrete thing, any conversation that we haven't been in communication with the county is not. This will be our third meeting with staff in 5 months, and we just haven't been able to get something on the agenda. So I will say any comment that the city hasn't been responsive or anything like that, just as a point of clarity, not to debate in the media back and forth about opinions of priorities and what's more important and what's not. I just would say April 7th, May 30th, and this Thursday will be 3 meetings with just staff. That doesn't count several meetings with county commissioners in person and Baptist and all. Tons of meetings across the board to try to get this done. But directly with trying to meet with staff, we've been as responsive as we think we can be to try to get something done. So hopefully we'll be able to get that Thursday, something that's palatable to be on the agenda, and go from there. And if not, we'll decide what's next.
You also have a add-on that the city council is going to vote on Thursday as well, that I guess changes some of the properties from right of first refusal to part of the donation agreement.
That's right.
And you mentioned yesterday to me that those were possibly the county was interested in this.
Yeah, well,
the reasoning behind it.
Yeah, so in my conversations with Commissioner May, what we've said is, how do we protect, whether it's presence of healthcare, presence of food access, these other things that are outside even just the 38 acres, and saying, hey, what can we do today? What can we do tomorrow? And knowing, listen, Baptist is going to be a long game approach. You don't develop 38 acres overnight. There's going to be, yes, it'll be an enormous housing opportunity for our region, for this to happen, for our military, for our local neighbors, all of that. There's so much opportunity, but as we know, a project of that size and scale takes time. So his concern, and I think a very fair one, is to say, well, what can we do today and tomorrow as well to start pouring back in and reinvesting in the community, not just waiting on whatever end result comes in the years to come. And so I think that's a fair one. And so some of that conversation is there some type of partnership around with other outlying property that where we could help provide that, or the county help purchase a piece of property to have some engagement there themselves. Obviously, I don't want to speculate what they would want to do or not do, but so there was conversation around that, which that doesn't change. But I think our position, we obviously, as you guys have seen this play out, and we still are here without anything ever even being taken for a vote, we got to start planning what's next. And so the add-on item is nothing other than, okay, well, if Baptist is willing to forego parcels, whether it be to the city or to the county, we can't continue to wait. We thought this would have been done in June, or that this would either have been voted yes or no 2 or 3 months ago, and we're already pushing it on time. So we don't want to yet again, kind of a fool me once, fool me twice situation, where if we are going to take donation of these properties, and that is a factor in our donation agreement in terms before we would go close on the property and then demolish, then we need to go ahead and get that done. Now, that doesn't change any conversation with the county. If there's something that the county's interested in terms of property or partnership, and that's how they can get their head around a larger contribution or something like that, I'm certainly all ears. I just think it would be short-sighted of us on the off verbal conversation of the county being interested that we would stop that process and wait for weeks or months to see that play out. So that add-on was a matter of us squeezing in timing, and then any action that takes place, any partnership that could take place, none of that changes. If there's a desire for that, we're open to that conversation, no different than we were a week ago or 2 weeks ago. So.
Yeah, Mayor, it really isn't a day. It's two votes. You need one vote. So you need either it's going to be Kohler or it's going to be Stroberger. So why not just meet with them directly and find out what their ask is, and if it's something that you could swallow?
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm open to meeting with anybody at any time. If I can get return phone calls, but I mean specific to Kohler. I don't want to say Stephen. But we've made calls, not recently, but during this process, and I'd meet with him today if he'd like to. How I see these things traditionally working out, if the goal is collaboration, is to work with staff on getting something that's palatable and allowing them to go to work and understand whether that's got votes or not. So I still want to respect that, the ability to do that, but that doesn't preclude anybody from having any conversation. I'm happy to, I'll meet with any of the 5 commissioners after this press conference if they'd like to, if we felt like that was the difference. But we've guessed wrong before in this process. So I'm happy to take on any conversation to get this to a vote, one way or the other. And if there's things that we can do to make it happen, and again, I mean, I think property is a perfect example. That wasn't even in conversation 90 days ago. Right. I think we have shown that we're willing to try to be flexible, work with Baptist, work with the county to get this done. But at some point, if the street isn't two-way in terms of wanting to work with us, then we have to take no for an answer, I guess, whether that goes for a vote or it doesn't. And so, again, we're trying to do it the right way. We're trying to get answer whatever questions that they have. We are not another thing that was mentioned. We're not aware of some pending request of documents that we haven't sent. That we've asked around the building. We're not sure of what that is. Maybe I know there was a big request many months ago before we had presented for 2 hours there. And all of that stuff's already public. The procurement's public, so there's no reason we wouldn't be sharing as much information as would be requested. So,
Mayor Reeves, in regards to the VO scooters, that petition that was going around, do you feel like you gave it an adequate look over, and ultimately why was it not enough for you to want to continue the program? Yeah,
so yes, I feel like we gave it an adequate look over. I mean, the numbers are pretty significant, and again, when we had our meeting with them in June, I asked the question, have you talked to our residents? Because, if you're only talking to customers, that's good for a business. That does not holistically respect what the value of the program is for our city. Yes, so that's why we went and asked. We put it out 2 or 3 times, certainly got a large enough sample size, and folks having issues with it. certainly outweighed the folks that, in terms of residents who live there that want to keep it. And, I think if we had to do it over again, and it's what I mentioned to VO in June, I would have probably been asked talking to residents ahead of time. And what happens in this job, I have another issue with this right now. What happens in this job sometimes is when some partners or businesses maybe don't do as good a job minding the store when in this case, VO, when VO's in business, it would have been great if they were engaging community groups, neighborhood associations. Nothing stopped them from doing that, but they kind of made it my job to do that. So then I would go to the neighborhood association, I would go to the Rotary Club, and then people would be complaining about scooters laying everywhere. And whether that was 100% true or a perception, you're leaving me to do your public relations with our, and so when you leave it that way forever, okay, well, the public relations is the vast majority of the people who live here say that they don't want them. And so that's the decision that we came to, which is the one I'm in charge of. How happy are the residents with some collaboration, some amenity? And I've got to be able to pivot when they say that this is not something that they want. So, again, I'm not here to Monday morning quarterback what their PR plan should be, but my argument would be if people said, well, these are super important to everybody, then it would have been nice to see them in the city, in the community, asking our community members, collaborating with us, hey, how do we make sure that we're performing, but to make sure we're not having customer service complaints, that type of thing. And instead, the only two requests that came to us during that meeting in June was, we would like to go back to going till 2 a.m. and we would like to go back to being able to drive on Palafox. And that came across as pretty tone deaf to me, because those are two of the biggest pain points we have. So it only reinforced the fact that it doesn't feel like the company really had any idea what was happening on the ground. They were not understanding what residents' issues were. And again, that's their choice to do it. Nothing in their contract required that or anything like that, but it's their business to run. And when that now is not here, that would be my, in retrospect, position is, man, we might be having a different conversation if we were doing some service recovery, if we were understanding what was happening out there and trying to make sure that it stayed harmonious instead of leaving that to be my job or the city's job. So again, I'm never saying that we'll never do it again, or that we wouldn't contract with VO. I have nothing personal against the company. I think if we have better infrastructure, which I think in many ways we actually will be in the next year or two with Bayfront and Sun Trail, and if there's the right places to do it, I would always entertain that. I like the idea of a non-motorized bike program. If that's something that, again, it financially pencils, that's what's always difficult, is can we get a vendor to come in and make that work for them financially so it's viable. But so I'm all for micromobility. I'm all for being able to move folks around, but it's got to be in an iteration that makes sense for our citizens first and foremost.
Did you feel at all maybe annoyed? I don't know if they had come to you since that meeting in June, but on the petition when you went back, I just looked at it a few days ago, and it was like in big red letters, the mayor won't listen.
Right.
Did you have any frustrations with that?
Unfortunately, that's I par for the course in this gig. Half-truths about what we would or wouldn't do. So again, we had that meeting in June, and I was disappointed to hear that they hadn't spoken to anybody, and really not even taken that symbol in June to say, oh, hey, we heard you, and we went and did a survey in July where we went, which neighborhood association should we go speak to? Those types of things. Even that would have, I think, gone a long way in just saying, hey, maybe we haven't done it yet over these last couple of years, but we could have. Hey, here's our concerted effort to improve. We didn't see that happen, and we got close enough to make a decision, and we waited on that survey as we told them we were going to conduct. They knew that in June. I was going to ask our residents since they hadn't been asked, and I don't overreact to Rotary clubs or neighborhood associations by themselves either. I don't want to let 8 or 10 folks. That's why we survey. That's why we track all this stuff. We try to be data driven as possible, is to say, I don't want one nasty email or one whatever to dictate which way we go. The best way we can figure out if it's the truth is to measure it. And certainly our citizens told us that there is more inconvenience than there is value.
Good morning, Mayor. I have
Hey.
a couple of questions from the newsroom, if that's
Okay.
all right.
Yep.
First of all, I'd love to know a little bit more about this active threat drill. Why the need for it?
Yeah, well, I think you guys all see the world that we live in right now, and I think when you're one of the 850 plus that work here, your concerns about safety are no different than a community member. What's the number one thing that an administration, a mayor, should be focused on for their citizens is public safety. I think there's not been a poll that's ever been taken that's not number one for our community. And when you look at employee engagement surveys, that's what our staff says as well, is to say, hey, yeah, communication can help, but there's safety concerns always, and it's an unfortunate sign of the times that these are things that we have to do, but I think it's the right thing to do, to just to have us go through this. It's good training for our PPD, it's good training for our staff, and we should always want to be, whether it's an active shooter drill, whether it's a hurricane, whether it's anything else. I don't think it's ever a bad thing for us to be better prepared today than we were yesterday about any type of issue when it comes to public safety.
Metal detectors, is that something you maybe would require for everyone coming in?
There's lots of, I would have to let my lawyer answer that more intelligently in terms of the law itself. There are some very large complications to that. So I don't want to just say the answer is no and give off the impression that is because out of choice. But there's lots of law in terms of who is allowed to carry and not carry, et cetera, that does not always make that possible all the time that we're open. So, but again, I defer that to our public safety officials and our city attorney's office in terms of what steps we can take.
Vibrio, would love to know if maybe signs will be put up at some of our beaches, or maybe testing in the water.
Well, that'll be a Ashley Hoffberger or Chip Simmons question, since it's out at the beach. The water quality things we manage, our team stays on top of pretty well, and we work with our partners on any of those issues that come up. But in terms of the beach, I wouldn't be able to speak to that.
I was maybe Bruce and Sanders.
Oh, got it. Okay. Yeah. So no protocol change based on current events. I think again, I have full confidence in how that gets monitored, how our team stays on top of it. When we do see any type of issue, the communication that we have, with the correct folks, the correct agencies. So, I think we'll just keep acting as we normally do.
A couple questions directly from the newsroom, so forgive me if I mess these up a little. But in a presentation to council yesterday at Agenda Review regarding the tree canopy project, staff states they were shorthanded, dozens of tree ordinance violations going unchecked. Is this something that concerns you, and do you think the department needs more staffing? Yeah,
well, first of all, I think there's many departments when you run a city government that aren't going to be able to be as fully staffed as we would all like. I'd add 5 more people in permitting, 5 more people in zoning, 5 more police officers, and 5 more firefighters today if I could. But the irony of those questions is then at the same time people say, well, what about property? We should get our property tax cut, but we need 1 more person, going out and inspecting trees. So, those are the dilemmas that you have when you have a certain size city budget and you've got to make decisions. Our team does a great job. And I believe when I got here, I think we had 200 trees on the priority list to get cut down that we were able to, with the council support, we're able to get that outsourced. So when my staff comes to me with an issue that we're reaching some critical point that we need to, that would be our next step. Is that it doesn't mean we have to hire 2 or 3 full-time people. That's not good use of taxpayer money. It could be that we could outsource some of that work out to experts in the field that can get us kind of back to square one. But if they have staffing issues, certainly they can come discuss those with us, and we'll see what we can do.
One last quick question. An owner of the former ice house at Government in Barrancas was recently cited by code enforcement for having demo work done without a permit. In your opinion, should the demo contractor who was working without a permit face sanctions from the city?
Well, I don't want to speak to a specific issue because I don't know the details around that. But we have protocols in place for that. That unfortunately happens. I don't know the details of that specific one you cite, but that happens more often than we would like. That people doing work on their property, on their residential homes, without having the proper permitting and all inspections, all of those types of things. So that's unfortunately the nature of this business as well, is having to deal with that. And so when we have those situations, we deal with the rules in the books and whatever our legal purview is to make sure that folks are getting that. I understand the frustration for a citizen when they say, hey, you've got to get a permit or you've got to get an inspection, but there's reasons for that. There's safety reasons for that. There's fire code reasons for that. When you build a building, then let's say you build an outbuilding at your house, and then you go sell your house in 2 or 3 years and it's not up to fire code. There could be lots of things that happen that are, cause public safety issues for the city. So trust us, our goal is not because we don't have anything else to do except to come check a permit or inspect someone's house, or that we want something to take longer. But it is a matter of public safety. It is a matter of respecting our neighbors and all of those types of things. And so that's the job we're put in, is to be that middleman, that liaison between respecting neighbors and public safety issues and then making sure that we enforce the rules. So I can just speak to it generally and say, hey, if someone's broken one of those rules, then we plan on enforcing it.
Mayor, on the LDC, the draft is out there. What are two of the things that the biggest changes that you see in the LDC that you like?
Yeah, I think number one by far is cleanup. We had parts of our code where so many duplicative things and different
Cleanup of the code itself.
Correct.
Right.
Correct. It's why you do this holistically, because there's so many Band-Aids on Band-Aids on Band-Aids where you could actually read a part of the code and interpret it one way and then turn 20 pages and interpret it another way. And so I would say, while that's not as front-facing tangibly, I can certainly say in this building, that's a very much welcome and needed change. Back to my last answer, we want clarity for everybody. That's easier on our staff. It's easier on the citizen. So I think that's a major improvement that's going to happen, is more transparent, more clear, not this kind of combative, vague language in one section or another section is number one. And then number two is my primary focus is our ability in the right locations to be able to thicken neighborhoods. And that does not mean every neighborhood's going to have high-rise buildings in it by any means, but when we have the example I always use with you guys, and when we have quarter-acre lots, half-acre lots that only allow one single-family house, and we say we're in a housing crisis, I think we should be looking at those places in the right areas that make sense. I'm not the expert on where those right areas are, but we've hired them, and we've got our staff in-house, and we've got our community, and that's why community engagement in this is so important. Is an architect's going to have a different opinion than a contractor, than someone who works in planning and zoning, and so the goal is that not that everybody's going to get everything they want, but that we end up with something harmonious that puts us in a better place. And what I usually hear, Rick, from outside, from architects, from contractors, it's less about, I don't like this one rule. It's tell me what the rules are, and help us follow them. And so that's why I really emphasize the number one. Sounds not that important, sounds clerical, and it is, but I think that's a big part of any confusion over the generations of time, is just tell us what the rules are and make sure we understand them, and then we'll try to abide by those rules. I hear that much more often than I hear, I don't like Rule 9 or Rule 10 or Rule 11 type of thing. So.
Mayor, follow up on that. When this process started, they kind of said any kind of things that could be controversial would be like taken as separate amendments. Has that played out? Are there going to be separate votes later? Or?
I'm not aware. I would think that information from before still remains accurate. I'm not aware, like, here are the 5 things that are going to be, take separate, and here, we're not even really there yet. I think we'll probably analyze that once this second round of public engagement happens. We see what the net result is, and then, we'll take, I'm sure there will be 3 or 4 things that are going to require much more conversation with council, that much more clear understanding on how those work. So, but at this point, none of those have reached my desk. I couldn't tell you, if you asked me to cite which 4 you think, I couldn't even tell you that yet. We're going to kind of let this process play out, and because what if public engagement round 2 kills one of those off? I just don't know yet. So, but do I expect that to happen? Yes, I expect, because I bet there hasn't been a land development code reform in the United States that's taken place that doesn't have 3 or 4 kind of bigger front-facing issues that take a larger conversation.
And then you kind of touched on this. Can you just kind of explain why this is an important piece of kind of your whole affordable housing policy agenda?
Yeah, well, because I believe that there's no greater swath want a one-stop swath of improving housing inventory than looking at your code. And that, it's not just in density, it's not just in being able to build a duplex instead of one house, it's in speed, it's in red tape, it's in the clarity. When you think about larger scale residential developers, for example, building apartment buildings or multi-unit buildings, these folks typically can invest in lots of communities, have lots of options, and a clear determining factor is, do we understand what the rules are, and are they clear to us? I really feel like it's not just a matter of let's look at where we can thicken neighborhoods or look at literally building inventory through that function. I think it's also the speed of which we build. Cities right now are in a housing crisis. We've been saying it for 3 years, but it takes a developer to do it. It takes funding and financing to do it. And so I think speed of development can be, and clarity of development can be just as valuable as quite literally changing zoning code that would allow 2 units to be built instead of 1, or a garage apartment to be built in a place that it otherwise was not able to be built. So hopefully we're really looking at both of those things at the same time, and that the net result of this is going to help us on both fronts.
Mayor, on Chappie James, it came up in the District 7 Town Hall.
Yep.
The last time we had a conversation in a press conference was July, and there were 3 items. One was the use agreement, stewardship agreement had expired.
Mm-hmm.
The county's looking for some sort of document about ownership. And then the third part was no one's ever seen Chappie James, the foundation's financials. So where are we now?
Yeah, so I'll repeat what came up at the District 7 Town Hall and our concern as it pertains to documents. So there's misperception, even including among some of the Chappie James supporters, that us expiring the agreement meant we weren't going to be helpful. And someone just hears that, they assume that. That's not what we said. What we said was that the agreement as written had required showing proof of funding. It had required showing plans, all of these things that the delta was so wide on that we can't just redline that or just change the date. We were so far off from that we just felt that it would be more necessary to just, hey, when the funding's there and the plan's there and everything, happy to have a conversation, and that remains the case as we stand here today. And then the second part that we've taken issue with as it pertains to trying to work with what the county's request is the county has requested ultimately that we take any liability of any funding that they use. So let's, for example, say they were to use TDC dollars, and that's much debated about whether they can or can't be. Well, in the version of the document that, and what the expectation from the county have told our city attorney's office is, well, we can send that money, but you'll need to sign something that says that whatever funding stream is used somehow comes back that it is not compliant. Pensacola City, you are on the hook for that. Well, we can't ever agree to that. I mean, that would be crazy for us to agree to that. And so why we would ever take obligation or ownership of the color of money, as we mentioned in the District 7 Town Hall, whatever color of money the county wants to use to help fund the project needs to be their decision, and then that has nothing to do with us. And so I don't know how it would be fair to our residents to take that a year from now someone calls and says, well, you weren't allowed to use those funds, but looks here that the mayor signed and took the risk. Why do we need to do that? I think that's between Chappie James and that's between the county. So again, we stand at ready to, when we feel like we understand that the funds are there and that we understand that this project's ready to move forward, we are still completely amenable to coming up with that agreement. But what we are absolutely not going to sign is something that says no matter where the source of funding comes from the county's coffers, we now take responsibility if they end up being non-compliant. We can't do that, and so we won't do that.
At one time, you'd suggested that a better place for the monument would have been at Veterans Memorial Park. Is that still on the table?
I think anything's on the table, and
Right.
and I think that was taken as I think, including with some commissioners, that I was saying that that's the only place I would accept having
No.
it. That's not what I said. What I was saying is we hadn't seen proof of funds yet. It's already a Veterans Memorial Park. It's actually closer to Chappie James' original house. I know that was one of the reasons that we had debated about where the original location was. So I was just simply making the point that if money is the issue, if it can't be raised, and I was looking for a solution to honor Chappie James without being able to come up with the larger source of funds that it would take to build the plaza, that be a viable option. And then that was, I think, amongst some of the leadership was spun into, I'm not supportive, or I shouldn't opine solutions. That's all I was doing. And if they show up tomorrow with proof of funds and the county's not asking us to take responsibility for the funds source that they use, then we're happy to have whatever conversation they want.
So the ball's in the foundation's court.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and that's been made abundantly clear and as a matter of fact, right before Tim left, had another meeting with them that Wednesday, I think the day after the District 7 Town Hall. So we're happy to make it work, but we aren't signing for risk obligation on $750,000, and we aren't going to enter into an agreement without knowing that it's going to happen or that it'll eventually happen. We're flexible. We've got to see some movement before we use the bandwidth in our office to just sign another agreement that doesn't really get us any closer to solutions.
Mayor, the local legislative delegation is having their meeting this week. Does the city have any legislative priorities or asks that it'll be made?
Yeah, we do. We get them to you specifically. I think right now at the state and federal level, we're hyper-focused on our port and our airport. Just in terms of reading the tea leaves of what can be successful in Tallahassee and in Washington, D.C., what has funding streams. You guys are seeing the same thing legislatively, especially in Tallahassee, that I am, which is, I don't think having high expectations on, large funded projects, multi-million-dollar projects, is really the season of life I expect this session to take. So we've been really focused. We're excited for potential phasing up the dock complex at American Magic, for example, which can also house a fireboat. If we're going to start having regattas, it'd be nice to make sure we have the police or public safety resources to be able to keep people safe as we start to host more and more of those things. And we've been certainly helped by FDOT, FSTED grant funding at the port. We're getting pretty close to having that dock complex funding. It's pretty expensive to dredge a new area over there. We're working with the Army Corps of Engineers. So I would say infrastructure improvements, both on port in general at berth 6, which is long overdue, as well as the dock complex for American Magic. And by the way, that's not exclusive to American Magic. That would be also a dock complex built for any other type of tenants that would be able to use it. So as a matter of fact, the funding doesn't allow it to be exclusive to anybody. And American Magic hasn't requested that. They need a place to put their boat in, but there would be additional capacity for us to use for other suitors, other job creators that want to come on port. So I think that's about a $10 million project, and we've got about 7.2 right now. So lots of hard work from Erica, from Lance, our grants team, to get us where we are. Especially when we thought it was 5, and we're at 7.8, and it's still 10. But a major part of that expense is the dredging, setting up the dredging, not even the maintenance of it long term. It's the starting, with no needing more depth there. So that's one. And then you guys already know the airport. We were very, very encouraged to get on FAA's terminal grant program this past year, which is kind of a hard list to get on. We've been working on for a couple years. In many cases, once you're on, you start to see recurring funding. So, we got $4 million this past time, and I think every little bit helped. We got $5 million from the state as well. So, every dollar that comes with the grant program, that has an impact on our citizen, because the lower the amount of money that we have to bond for the terminal, the lower we can keep the passenger employment costs, therefore the lower we can keep fares. So there's a direct correlation between how much money we bond at the airport and it having an impact on rates. So you'd say, well, why would a citizen care if we bond the money, the city's borrowing it? Well, there is a indirect impact that would flow down potentially, and that's what our airport's done such a great job of over the years, especially through COVID. Our airport did a phenomenal job of controlling price per plane passenger that kept service. And when you saw in COVID, there were many air carriers leaving airports our size, lowering service. And we decided to use our ARPA dollars and the previous administration in a smart way, which was, hey, keep that price per plane passenger down so we can continue to get people from Baldwin County and other parts of the region for flights. So anyway, so we'll continue. I would say those are really our top two overall, and that's both at the state and the federal level. But we're sending those priorities, of course, out to all of the delegation as well to make sure they're aware. Anything else? All right, guys, thanks so much.